Okay, so we go ahead and finish our lecture for which we started last time, talking about classroom discourse and ELT implications, right? So just to recapitulate, okay, so last time, what are the main points we discussed last time? I presented? Yes, so there were 3 questions, okay? Now, the first question, the importance of communication, okay, for classroom discourse, for teaching and learning. Second question, before the challenges. Yes, in what ways can teachers make a best use of their language, okay, for classroom discourse, for achieving their pedagogical aims, okay? And then the third question, yes, Ikram? Mariam? Can you close the door? Can you repeat?
What is the relationship, if any, between the language used by teachers and the learning which occurs?
Okay, and the learning which occurs. Now, the first question, can we recapitulate? How and in what ways communication is important for classroom discourse, for teaching and learning? What ways? Yes.
We see, for example, that communication underpins everything that occurs in the classroom.
Okay.
And it is used to prompt the interaction inside the classroom.
Yes.
It is essential to optimize the class time because activities and activities.
Yes. It is very essential to all aspects of the teaching and learning classroom setting.
It's also valuable or essential to manage group work.
Yes, it is valuable in managing group work. So generally speaking, it is the central, okay, aspect of classroom setting. Okay, the classroom setting with all its variables and so on cannot work if there is no communication. Communication is the basis. Okay, so that's how communication is important for teaching and learning. Concerning the second question, the challenges. Yes. Okay. In what ways can teachers make effective use of their language? Yes?
Using a language that helps rather than that hinders.
Yes, okay. So the best ways to find out the best ways to use their classroom discourse, to use their language in such a way to promote, to improve teaching and learning, of course, rather than using classroom discourse in such a way to hinder the teaching and learning processes. Right? Yes?
Amen. Can also make use of communication interaction competence inside the classroom.
Yes, we're going to see that one later on, so we will come back to it. Now, concerning this question number 2, so this is the main idea, okay? For example, I told you that one of the main characteristics of classroom discourse is that the teacher is a controller, and manages the interaction. That's why there is this interaction, which is called initiation, response, feedback, and usually the students are very minor contributors, to the classroom discourse, in the sense that their utterances are very short and they are guided by the teachers, etc. And we said that one of the ways how their teachers can use their language in such a way to promote teaching and learning rather than hindering teaching and learning is to give the students more room for talking rather than just giving short answers, right? So this is one of the suggestions we talked about, which goes hand in hand with the answer for this question number 2, right? Then there was, of course, question number 3, the relationship, if there is any relationship between classroom discourse and students' achievements, okay? And there's no final answer for this. Some people say yes, some people either no. But usually, because of the fact that this question is raised many times, suggests that there could be some relationship between the way how teachers use their classroom discourse and the students' achievements, okay, and achieving pedagogical goals. Now, for the challenges, now, what was the kind of first challenge we spoke about? in relation to teachers.
Little time is spent on classroom, discourse.
On classroom discourse in teacher education programs, right? Yes, Nadia? Yes, most teachers, most teacher educators pay little attention to this classroom discourse in the teacher education programs, right? So therefore, this author we're having, okay, he suggests a kind of third strand, okay, because usually what happens in teacher education programs is that they focus on methodologies, okay, techniques, okay, but then they forget about this aspect of classroom discourse, don't handle it as they should be. So he proposes that there should be this kind of focus on introducing classroom discourse, features of classroom discourse, and of course how to allow teachers to better use their classroom discourse for achieving their pedagogical, of course, goals. So this was the first point. Then the second point we can stop at is the one that you have mentioned, which is that he suggests a kind of competence. He refers to it as classroom interactional competence. So he suggests that the teachers in a teacher education programs, of course, they should learn about the features about this classroom discourse, okay, in order to build this kind of knowledge, this kind of competence that he refers to it as CIC, okay. So teachers and learners' ability to use interaction as a tool for mediating and assisting, of course, learning. Then we started talking about what? We started talking about the features, characteristics of classroom discourse. The first thing we mentioned was this one, which is control of interaction, in the sense that the teacher is the controller. He controls everything about classroom interaction. He controls everything about communication and interaction inside the classroom setting. Right? Then the next point we talked about is referring to another feature of classroom discourse, which is speech modification, in the sense that teachers should modify, simplify their language, their classroom discourse, their teacher talk, in such a way to make it easier for the students to understand. You remember the cycle? Can you remind me about that cycle? Yes, Mariam? Yes, that's this cycle. So we always going inside that cycle, okay, back and forth, okay, in such a way that whenever we want, as teachers, we want our students to understand. We have pedagogical aims. We want our students to achieve better, right? So how are we going to allow them to achieve better? It is by allowing them to understand better. And how are you going to allow them to understand better is via simplifying your language as a teacher, right? Good. So this was the last character. There were many areas, okay, many ways how we can simplify. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details of that. Now you have the presentation on YouTube. You can go back to it, and then you have the book as well. You can read the chapter in details. Now I'm going to move to another feature of classroom discourse, okay, which is elicitation techniques. Because one of the main features of classroom discourse, and one of the areas where the teacher spends most of his time doing, is that of elicitation, okay? And there are different ways, techniques for doing elicitation, okay? You elicit information from students, right? So what are these techniques? So the strategies used by normally teachers to get learners to respond. This is what we mean by initiation, okay? You want to get something from students, right? The strategies used by teachers to get learners to respond, to give them replies, to give replies to teachers, to give information to teachers, etc. It entails, of course, one of the main techniques is, of course, asking questions. So it entails asking questions. So that's why if you go to these techniques, you will find out that there are most of them just questions. But there are different types of questions depending on what you want to get, okay, as a teacher from students. It is by asking questions for which they know the answer. This is one of the features of these kinds of questions, is that the teachers know the answers, right? And then the purpose of these questions are pedagogical, because they want to involve the students, to engage the students, and to motivate them more, etc. Yes, we're going to see them, display questions. It is by asking questions for which they know the answer that teachers are able to control and guide the classroom. So at the same time, they want to elicit information, they want to get response, but it's also used as one of the ways for controlling and guiding the classroom discourse so that they don't go and talk. I remember many times when we were doing peer teaching, one of the observations that was reiterated several times is that you have to avoid and be careful about when you are eliciting information from students. Zakaria mentioned that several times. When you want to elicit either vocabulary or you want to elicit information. So you have to be very careful. So how you can to be careful is via guiding, okay, controlling this classroom discourse in such and using questions. Okay? So by using questions, you can guide, and therefore you can avoid some of the strange answers you can get from students, either in terms of vocabulary or in terms of ideas. Right? So this is it. Then one of the main types of questions here, they are, as you have mentioned, Sophia, they are referred to as display questions, since they require learners to reply or to display what they know. Okay? To display what they know. Elicitation, okay, technique. So we are going to go further into the details related to display questions. So display questions serve a range of functions. We can use them as teachers to perform several functions, including eliciting a response. So you want to elicit a response from students, getting a reply from students. Another function for which we can use display questions is in order to check understanding. You elicit, okay, you display questions, you use display questions because you don't want to get answers from students, but you just want to check if the students have understood, okay, what you have been talking about. Checking understanding. Guiding learners towards a particular response. This is what we have mentioned by guiding, controlling the classroom discourse. So you direct them towards some area that you are targeting. Okay? Guiding learners towards a particular kind of response. And then another feature or function of display questions is to promote involvement, to promote engagement of the students, to promote the motivation of the students, to get them with you. Okay, to get them together, to get them in the same spirit when you are talking about something, so they follow what you are talking about. Okay, and of course, in order to achieve your pedagogical aim, so promoting involvement. And finally, okay, concept checking. It's related to checking understanding, of course, but when you say checking understanding, you can have different things, understanding about different things. Okay, one of them is checking if they understood the concept, and usually we are dealing with vocabulary, we can dealing with grammar, okay, concept related to whatever field. Okay, display questions is to check or evaluate understanding. So this is kind of recap, resume of the main functions of display questions. To check or evaluate understanding, concepts, learning, previous learning, etc. It's just a resume of what the previous functions I have presented in the previous slide. Responses tend to be short. Another feature of these elicitation or technique or display questions is when you ask them these questions, of course, the students, as we have said, they will reply using short answers, simple answers, restricted replies, right? They don't go and talk about details. Short, simple, restricted answers. It's a kind of mechanical interaction going on when you do these kinds of display questions. There is a kind of mechanical classroom discourse, okay, initiation, response, feedback, okay, that is often exemplified in initiation, response, feedback sequences by Sinclair and Coulthard, okay, very mechanical, okay. Example, one example of these kinds of display questions. I hope it's okay. Okay, so you have a look at it. Okay, good. So you notice there that the teacher is using display questions, okay, for eliciting information. It's from students, for example. So, can you read question 2, Junior? So, directing. Can you read? So, there's reading there. And then he starts, where was Sabina in unit 10? Where was she? Okay. Go out. She went out, yes, the first, so first she was in. He's directing, he's looking for some specific kind of answer, cued response, cued question. And then what did she take with her? What did she take with her? Drug. And finally, that's it. Okay, so those are examples of display questions, right? Another example of elicitation technique is what is referred to as referential questions. One of the main differences between these two kinds of questions, display questions and effect questions. Display questions, they usually try to elicit very short, simplified, restricted answer. Okay? Well, I'm just telling the most apparent difference. Okay? Very short, simple, restricted answer.
Also, the teachers know the answer.
Yeah, he knows the answer. And also the same thing for referential questions. The teacher knows the question, knows the answer most of the time. Most of the time.
But the referential doesn't necessarily know the answer.
Most of the time. I doubt it that yeah, most of the time he knows the answer. But sometimes, yeah, he doesn't know. Okay? Sometimes. But
Most of the time, referential questions are used in order to elicit opinions of the students.
yes, this is the area where, but the referential, they are not only for eliciting opinions. Okay? They are not simply for eliciting opinions, attitude. You can elicit some detailed information. Detailed information, that's what you are looking for. Okay? And of course, when you are asking students about their opinions, you don't know. Okay? But that's one area where they don't know. But as a teacher, concerning knowledge, information, he knows to know. Okay? You should know. So teachers, so referential questions, you are asking for, this is the difference. You are asking for detailed answers. More detailed. Okay? Answers. Okay? Teachers also ask genuine, more open-ended questions. Right? These are called referential questions that are designed to promote discussion, debate, engage learners, and produce longer, more complex response. Okay? So those are all functions, okay, characteristics of these kinds of referential questions. So to promote discussion and debate, okay, since you are talking about argumentation, your opinions, etc., as an example, or engage learners. This is both of them. They have the same function: display questions and differential questions. Produce longer, more complex response. Okay, this is the main difference for me. Okay, the main difference. Usually, yeah, this is the main difference. They result in more natural responses by learners, often longer and more complicated. Okay, the students are given detailed information to some extent, more comprehensive answers to some extent. Okay, and also they deal with this area of opinions, so they natural responses. They lead to a more conversational type of interaction. You are more engaged in a kind of natural-like conversation. Natural-like conversation, like the ones which we have outside of classroom setting. Okay, so we have longer, interaction going on. Referential questions often begin with WH questions such as who, why, what, etc. Display questions usually they are yes/no questions. Usually they are yes/no questions. Okay, usually yes, you can have WH, but usually they are yes/no questions. Okay. Or not even the yes/no question, or not even WH questions, but you can have something like what we have seen in the previous slide. Okay, let me go back to it. For example, here you have, she went, okay, teacher, she went out, yes, so first she was in this is no yes question, not WH question. But you are given the beginning of the answer, and then they have to complete the answer, okay? So this is you have to be careful about that. So, They usually, begin with WH questions such as who, why, and what. The use of appropriate questioning strategies requires an understanding of the function of a question in relation to what is being taught. Pedagogical function here, okay? We're talking about the pedagogical use of questions. So you have to use these questions in such a way to reach your pedagogical goals, okay? So they have to be meaningful in this way. Elicitation techniques or referential questions example here. I give you a little time. Okay, so we have some questions there. I agree. Do you believe in this kind of stuff? Okay, we talked about it, and then you have maybe why not? Why not? I understand. So and why maybe Monica? Okay, okay. What about you? Okay, so he is trying to get more information, detailed information from, okay, and he's trying to be more involving, more engaging for the students, okay, to get them into the discussion.
The UFOs are unidentified flying objects which are believed to really are used by extraterrestrials.
Okay, what are you talking about here?
UFOs.
UFOs?
Unidentified flying objects.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people they claim to have seen some unidentified flying object and it has a relationship with extraterrestrials.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for this information. Do you believe in in these extraterrestrial? Huh? Do you believe in them? No? Yes. Yes. Maybe there is some other people living somewhere more advanced. Maybe.
Not necessarily people, maybe creatures.
Creatures.
Yeah.
There are creatures. Yes. Where are they going to go to? Which? Okay, so that's another different. Because we are running out of time, I would have loved to go into that discussion. The next feature of terrestrial feature, okay, of classroom discourse is referred to as initiation, response, feedback, exchange structure, okay. Of course, I stands for initiation, R for response, and then F for feedback. Some people call, instead of feedback, the evaluation, because usually feedback is a form of evaluation for the students. It was introduced by Sinclair and Coulthard in 1975. I'm sorry, I forgot to put the pictures of these two guys for you on the PowerPoint, but you can check these people. One of them is still alive. I think he's working some Asian university. Coulthard. Coulthard is still alive. Sinclair is dead, I guess. So these are the first who talked about this. IRF is also known as recitation script or triadic structure, some kind of other terminology used to refer to this IRF exchange structure. Instead of saying IRF exchange, you would say recitation script or triadic structure. Classroom discourse follows a fairly typical and predictable structure. It's kind of mechanical, predictable, structure comprising three parts. The teacher initiating, and a student giving a response, and then the teacher giving a feedback, usually in the form of evaluation for the students' answers and responses. Okay? They are commonly known as IRF or IRE, initiation response evaluation, as I said. Okay. Teachers' feedback is an evaluation of students' contribution. That's why they are referred to as IRE. And teachers are constantly assessing, of course, this is the main area, constantly assessing the correctness of an utterance and giving feedback to learners. Okay? Giving feedback. Of course, feedback, not correcting, but just giving feedback yes or no, or to some extent, so it's kind of evaluation. Example. All of the previous extracts, they are examples. Okay? And this one is another example. So here you have the initiation, and then the R, response, junior, and then feedback of the teacher, right, yes, and then at the same time giving another initiation, and yes, very cyclic, very repetitive, mechanical, okay, and then the response and then feedback, right? It enables us to understand the special nature of classroom interaction, okay? One of the ways to understand, because most of the studies, investigations of classroom discourse, they have dealt with this issue of initiation, response, feedback. Okay? And that's why it says here that it helps us to understand the special nature of classroom interaction. It enables us to understand why teachers talk so much more than learners. Okay? For every utterance made by a learner, teachers typically make two. The kind of mechanical, mathematical calculation here. So for the teacher, he has two terms, and the student has only one term. And it shows how teachers' talk dominates, okay, to some extent, the classroom discourse. It allows us to see how, if overused, classroom interaction can become very mechanical, very monotonous, okay, because it's predominant, okay, so it becomes very mechanical and monotonous. Now there are some important observations to draw in relation to IRF exchange structure. Sinclair Code has original work took place in L1 primary classes. L1 primary classes. Okay, an example is France, for instance, is an example where you can have L1 classes because French is the native language of the people, the children, and when they go to school, they use French. So it's well, they have L1, and all the subjects they learn, they are in French. So they're L1 classes. Okay? For us in Morocco, it's a special case because we have a diglossia. We can't consider it as L1. Now, direct Arabic is our L1, maybe. And then you have a standard Arabic, different, a little bit. So it's a complicated issue. Okay? They produced a hierarchical model for understanding classroom discourse. So they went to these L1 primary classes, primary schools. They recorded data and etc. And they produced a hierarchical model for understanding classroom discourse. They found that there were three basic kinds of exchange. Okay. Question the types of exchanges that can happen. Okay, that happened in these places where they have been. First, question and answer sequences. It's clear, I guess. No need to explain. So you have a question and then followed by an answer sequence. Okay. Pupils responding to teachers' directions. Sit down, open the book. Another example of exchange. Pupils responding to teachers' directions. Pupils listening to the teacher giving information. And this is what I refer to it in my article as teaching event. Teaching event, where the teacher is lecturing like I'm doing now. I'm not giving you any directions. I'm not involved with you in any kind of initiation response feedback. All I'm doing is talking, giving information. So this is another sequence, another example of sequence. Okay? All classroom discourse is goal-oriented. Goal-oriented. It is meaningful. It has got a name. It's not random. Okay. The responsibility for understanding goals and setting the agenda lies largely with the teacher, of course, because he's the authority, he's the one who has power. He's controlling the discourse. He's directing, guiding the classroom discourse. So therefore, he establishes the goals and setting the agenda towards some aims. Pedagogical goals and language used to achieve them are very closely related and even intertwined. Okay, so when you go and check and study, investigate classroom discourse, and particularly you focus on these IRF exchange structures, you will notice that they are targeting some pedagogical goals established by this teacher. Okay, they are not random. The prime responsibility for what is said in the classroom lies with the teacher. We have said this now. Teachers control the discourse through the special power and authority they have, but also through their control of the discourse. How do they control the discourse? By the questions they got. They ask specific kinds of questions, leading the students to some kind of specific targets. Okay? So teachers control. And they control who may speak and when. So all these we draw them. We draw them when we are analyzing classroom discourse. When we are analyzing particularly initiation, response, feedback, exchange structure. There are many important observations we can draw. We have seen the others, and this is a continuation. It shows how much the teacher controls the classroom setting. The control who may speak and when and for how long and on what topic, right? They control turn taking through the use of IRF, who speaks, who gives the answers, the turn taking, conversation analysis, we will see this later on. Not only do they initiate a response, they offer an evaluation, that's why you have initiation, response, feedback, okay? Further evidence of control, okay, when they give an evaluation, this also shows that they are giving or having more control, okay, on the classroom discourse. Learners take their cues from the teacher, so also the students, they are submissive in this regard. They submit to what the teacher is doing, so they follow the teacher, okay, to the teacher's cues, so they follow him, and rarely initiate a response. It's very rare that you can see students initiate a response. This is what happens actually, okay? But what is recommended is something different. We have to give, okay, more freedom for students, keeping our authority, keeping our power, but we have to give more freedom and authority and power to students. Their role is to answer questions, respond to prompts. Eunice, you asked me last time about prompts. Prompts, okay? Prompts usually what you have, for example, in essay writing, when you in exams, we give you prompts. It means the subject you have to do. And the same thing in initiation, response, feedback. Initiation, we give prompts that say, talk about this. X, yes, cues, usually related to topic. I want you to give me something, information about this topic, X, not that topic. That's a prompt. And teachers are prompters. One of their roles. The initiation, response, feedback sequence enables teachers to understand interaction in classroom. So if you do read about the research in this area, it helps you and build this communicative interaction competence. Okay. It helps teachers comprehend its special nature. If you learn about it, you will be able to better handle this. And understanding and awareness of IRF enables teachers to consider how they might vary interaction more. Okay? If you improve this knowledge, referred to as CIS, communicative or communication interaction, okay, competence, it will help you to consider how you can diversify the way you do initiation, response, feedback. And it helps them introduce alternative types of sequences. Okay. This is finished now for the second. Now we move on to another feature of Clash on Discourse, which is also dominated by what's called as repair. Okay, Rahma, it's referred to as repair. Okay. Now, repair, we have said that this has to do with error analysis, correcting students' mistakes, etc. The ways in which teachers deal with errors, or the ways in which you repair students' responses and replies. Error correction occupies a considerable amount of teachers' time. This is obvious as well. Most of the time, teachers spend quite enough time correcting students' mistakes. Apart from questioning, the activity that most characterizes language classrooms is correction of errors. Van Leer, 1988. Okay. In addition to initiation response, so there is this kind of focus on correcting students' errors and mistakes. According to Van Leer, two conflicting views of error correction. There is what is one that says we should avoid, this is an issue, okay? There are people who say that we have to avoid error correction. We shouldn't get involved into error correction. Let the students make mistakes. This is one view. And we have to avoid error correction at all costs since it affects the flow of classroom communication. This is why teachers avoid them. It is recommended from some experts to avoid them, to avoid error correction. And there's the other one which says that we must correct all errors so that learners acquire a proper standard language. Okay, so you have to do is make a combination of the two. A combination. Don't get too much involved in it. Okay? You focus on the most, and there are different ways. I guess the videos I gave you, there is one video that talks about the different ways you can correct. Okay, there are different ways. So you have there some tips there. Teachers need to decide on the type and frequency of error correction on the basis of pedagogical goals of the moment. Okay, it depends on what's your priority. Okay, what's your priority? It includes, there are two types if you want to be involved into error correction. Of course, there are two ways how you can do it, in addition to what you have seen in the videos. There is what is referred as direct and then indirect error, okay, correction. Direct, of course, the teacher is correcting. That's as simple as that. But indirect, you can do like peer correction or repetition for correction, different ways. Example repair strategies are ignore the error completely. It's one kind of repair, one kind of error correction. Okay? It's one kind of error correction. Okay? Yeah, of course, very slight. Okay? Indicate that an error, you can ignore the error completely. Not for all errors, of course. Okay? You have to choose, okay, which one's slight, minor. Indicate that an error has been made and correct it yourself. Direct. Indicate that an error has been made and get the learner who made it to correct it. Okay? Via repetition, for example. Okay, other ways. Indicate that an error has been made and get the learners or other learners to correct it. Peer correction. Peer correction. So these are some of the ways. Example here. There is an example. Bigger, I'm sorry, because I'm going to do it this way then. It's okay? So there is one correction there, which is gives me related to third person singular. There is this student learner 4 who says police stats, policeman, or give me, and then the teacher says gives me. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, yeah. So, okay, so summary for our lecture about the features and etc. of classroom discourse. So, some of the main features of classroom discourse we have discussed are control of patterns of communication. The teachers control, count them. Okay, teachers modified language, modification, speech modification. Teachers modified. Okay, there's a repetition there. Sorry. Okay, so let's do it again. So we have control, and then modified speech modification, elicitation, repair, of course, and then IRF, exchange, structure. And that's the end of this lecture. Thank you. Thank you. So, yes, excuse me.